Hello, Superintendent Segura, members of the board, and the Austin ISD community. My name is Ed Ramos, Chief Financial Officer of Austin ISD. I'm going to present a budget update specifically emphasizing the steps we are taking as a district to reduce our overall adopted budget deficit of $52 million. So we began with an overview of our budget development process for the 24-25 school year. This budget development process begins as early as October with the release of department budgets to our various departments throughout the district. We also closely monitor our PEIMS Fall Student Snapshot, our enrollment snapshot, which this year occurred on October 27th of 2023. The purpose of that is to monitor our actual enrollment compared to our enrollment projections that we used in the budgeting process. We also release campus budgets for next school year in the month of January. And also in January, we began our engagement process, our budget engagement process, which specifically we hold virtual and in-person budget community sessions for our community, our board of trustees, our staff, and our committees throughout the district. We also analyze as part of this process our budgets from internal stakeholders and begin prioritizing our budget, our overall budget as a district. We begin to implement strategies and reductions that we make in this current school year to also include in the 24-25 budget, including potential investments that we may have as a district, which could include compensation increases and other budget priorities based on our overall strategic plan and scorecard goals. We also present a preliminary recommended and proposed budget to our Board of Trustees in the month of April and June, with the goal of ultimately adopting a budget for the next school year on June 20th of 2024. And then once the budget is adopted, we begin to perform budgetary reviews, making sure that they align with the district scorecard and initiatives. And that process is a year-long process as we continually monitor our budgets. For this current school year, there are specific areas that we are monitoring just to ensure that we, again, reduce our overall budget deficit of $52 million. These main areas include administrative costs that we undertake as a district. We evaluate vacancies via payroll that are occurring throughout the year as a district. And then we also review contracts to compare the cost of any contract and how that relates to overall student performance and outcomes. So is our investment worth the outcomes that that contract is achieving? We are also looking at software and analyzing that software throughout the district just to evaluate for possible redundancies that may be occurring in the district and the opportunity to potentially centralize some of these softwares. We also monitor overtime in an effort to control overtime costs in the district. There are times when we do and must use overtime depending on the number of vacancies or the work that is occurring in the district. But there are also opportunities for us to control these overtime costs throughout the year. And then finally, we review revenue alternatives. And so what that means is we look at other sources of revenue besides state aid, where we could potentially increase the revenue that we receive as a district in an effort to, again, reduce our overall $52 million budget deficit. The 88th legislative session occurred, of course, as you know, in January of 2023. The session began with a $33 billion surplus, and despite this surplus, it was a disappointing session for public education funding. We did not receive an increase to the basic allotment or an increase to provide funding for teacher salary increases. After four special sessions that occurred also during this legislative cycle, we still, at the end of those sessions, did not receive any increases to the basic allotment or increases to fund teacher salaries. And that was all due to any public education funding being tied to vouchers. And so much of the state is opposed to vouchers. And as a result, legislation did not pass to increase public education funding. The reason that becomes very key and important to us is we have not received additional funding since 2019. When you look at inflation and how that has factored in with our costs as a district, our funding per student has actually decreased over the last legislative session back in 2019. So we are continuing to pay close attention to this legislative cycle, hoping that there will be a fifth legislative session with the ultimate outcome to increase the basic allotment funding per student, but that remains to be seen. With regards to revenue alternatives, one of the areas that we are looking at to really increase our overall revenue sources in the district is interest earnings. And so one of the important data points to know with regards to interest earnings is that back in November of 2021, we were earning an interest rate of 0.06% on our cash reserves. You fast forward to current November 2023, and our interest earnings from cash reserves is at 5.22%. So that's a significant increase from over a few years ago. And so our goal is to really try to maximize interest earnings in the district from local tax collections that begin coming in as early as November, December. So our overall budget for this year, in the first graph, you see 21.9 million is what we budgeted for this current school year in interest earnings. We have earned, as of the end of November, 10.1 million. So we're at 46% earned compared to budgeted. We also have a goal, the middle graph, of really maximizing interest earnings and hoping to achieve $31.9 million in interest earnings compared to our budget of 21.9 million. So that's almost a 10 million increase above what we budgeted. So that is our overall goal that would help us reduce our overall budget deficit. And then the final graph to your right is what we are projecting to earn compared to our goal. So of the $31.9 million goal that we have as a district, we currently, based on numbers and earnings as of the end of November, are projecting to end the year with $28.8 million in interest earnings. And so we are closely monitoring that. Again, these numbers will be updated on a monthly basis based on what we are seeing in the market. Another area that we make sure that we maximize as a district is really claiming all federal indirect costs that we have available to us as a result of the number of grants that we oversee as a district. And so the reason that's important to us is that we want to make sure that we consistently apply indirect costs as a district to all grants. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to recover much of our overhead costs that we have as a district as a result of overseeing grants throughout the school year. These overhead costs can include electricity, software, equipment, and of course, a portion of our operational staff expenditures. So by being able to maximize the indirect costs that we can claim from these grants, we are able to recover the majority of our overhead costs to oversee the grants. And so as an example, we budgeted $2.7 million that we can recover in indirect costs. As of the end of November, we're almost at $1 million that we have recovered from these costs. Our goal is to achieve 9.7 million in indirect costs recovery. And so we are of the $2.7 million that we budgeted. And so our projections, based on numbers that we are seeing through the end of November, is that we will be able to recover $8 million of the original $2.7 million that we budgeted. A little short of our goal, but again, that number may change based on the numbers that we are seeing throughout the rest of the school year. One of the big areas that we continue to monitor is vacancy savings. And the reason for that is where we as a district can achieve the most savings throughout the school year. So one of the things that we know is that when we do budget our total payroll costs as a district, we assume 100% employment for all employees. We also know that that's not realistic. We usually are at 96, 97% employed as a school district. So that gap in the time that we are able to hire for any vacancies, that does achieve vacancy savings, payroll savings. And so for this current budget year, we did budget $822 million in payroll costs. Based on numbers that we are seeing through the end of November, we anticipate a final payroll of $790.5 million. So that translates to estimated vacancy savings of 31.6 million. In our budget, when we did create and adopt the $52 million budget deficit, we did include 21.6 million in vacancy savings. And so we did embed some of the vacancy savings already in our current budget in an effort to make sure that we were as accurate with our overall budgeted numbers as we could be. But again, based on the numbers that we are currently seeing, we anticipate overall vacancy savings of $31.6 million. So that is one number that we will continue to monitor throughout the school year. Overtime is another area that, again, we are currently monitoring. As organization leaders, we are responsible to make sure that we review expenses to identify any unnecessary costs. And so this school year, we budgeted $8.7 million. We have spent year to date, as of the end of November, $2.5 million. And so based on these numbers, as of, again, the end of November, we are projecting to end the year with $8.1 million in overtime costs compared to the $8.7 million that we budgeted. And so that small difference of 600,000 does translate to savings for us as a district. We're also, as I stated earlier, reviewing all contracts that we have in the district. And the goal is to review the cost of these contracts and look at what student performance and outcomes these contracts are giving back to us as a district. So is the investment of the contract worth the outcomes that we are receiving for that investment? And so what do we as a district include in contract costs? These are all costs associated with services provided to Austin ISD. That could include legal services, utilities, copier equipment rentals, consulting services, and maintenance services. So we look at all contracts that we as a district undertake. So in overall contract costs for this year, we have a budgeted cost of $81.8 million. As of the end of November, we've expended $23.8 million in contracted costs. Our goal is to expend by the end of the year $80.3 million compared to the $81.8 million that we budgeted. So that's a $1.5 million savings for us. And so currently, based on the numbers that we are seeing, we do anticipate expending $76.9 million in contracted costs of the $81.8 million that we have budgeted. So we are trending in a good direction with our overall contracted costs in this district. We're also evaluating software costs. So again, our goal as a district is to evaluate software throughout the district to make sure that we identify any redundancies and explore centralizing certain software products that we have as a district. We have $7.1 million in software costs that we did budget this school year. As of the end of November, we've expended $4.2 million. And so we are projecting to end the year actually a little bit higher than what we budgeted, $8.3 million. As we continue to monitor and evaluate these softwares, that number may change. But again, as of the end of November, we're looking at ending the year with $8.3 million in software costs. And so when you look at our overall areas that we are monitoring as a district, early on in the school year when we passed our current budget, we adopted a budget deficit of $52.26 million. And so in looking at the areas that we are monitoring and where we are projecting to end the year as a district, we anticipate ending the year with a almost $31 million deficit. So that is an improvement compared to the $52 million that we adopted this early on this school year back in June. Our goal is to really reduce our overall budget deficit by 50%. So we're really hoping to continue to monitor these expenditures, reduce our overall expenditures as a district, and end the year with a $26 million budget deficit compared to the $52 million budget deficit that we adopted. This is also assuming that there are no increases to the basic allotment. So as I stated earlier, there is still a legislative session that may occur sometime this spring. It would be the 5th special session. But all of our numbers are assuming that we do not receive any increases to the basic allotment or to fund any teacher salary increases. One of the other important data points that we continue to monitor is our unassigned fund balance. So as a district, we do have a local policy that we must maintain at least 20% in unassigned fund balance compared to our overall operational expenditures. And so when you look back at 2018 through 2024, you see where our unassigned fund balance percentages were. Back in 2018, we were at 34.5. That number dropped to 25.1% at the end of the 21-22 school year. For the 22-23 school year, we actually were able to increase fund balance. Part of that was because of our ESSER funding and using that to supplant some of our budget deficit. So our overall unassigned fund balance percentage at the end of 22-23 was 36.5%. And then we adopted our $52 million deficit. So that dropped our unassigned fund balance percentage to 25.1. Based on the numbers that we are currently looking at as of the end of November, we anticipate ending the year with an overall fund balance of $258 million or 28.9% of unassigned fund balance. And so we continue to closely monitor our fund balance. That fund balance is going to become very significant and important, especially if during this legislative session, there are no additional funding increases to the basic allotment. So that fund balance is going to be key in making sure that we as a district remain financially strong and fiscally viable over future school years. Then we also monitor Title I, and we want to make sure that as a district, we maximize federal Title I expenditures that we have in this district. Title I expenditures are used in our campuses with the highest need. And so this school year, we received $20.9 million in federal Title I funds. As of the end of November, we have expended $4.5 million. And so we are projecting to end the year with $20.5 million expended of a budgeted $20.9 million. So that's almost 98% expended of Title I funds. And the reason that's important is because we want to make sure that we are able to get these funds to our campuses that really need it the most. And so we want to make sure that we maximize the ability of our campuses to really use these funds for the students that have the highest needs in this district. And again, as we continue our budgeting process during this school year, we will continue to bring updates to our board and community in our continued efforts to really be transparent and continue our transparency as a district and continue this transparency in our budgeting process. I want to thank you, and you all have a good evening.